The video you're about to watch means a lot to me, mainly because as a content creator, I really uphold myself with giving you the most accurate and correct information to do with Idle Heroes. And a lot of the times that means I will not make content just because I can. So that's why I wait until events go live before reviewing them, because DH Games change things, because that's just what they do sometimes. So I want to always give you guys accurate information where I don't have to then remake a video because the old video becomes irrelevant. Now, the reason I'm making this video today is because there's been news circulating because barrygaming recently put out a video talking about a new strategy in Idle Heroes early game. So if you're a new player, hopefully you're going to be learning the correct truths about this strategy, and there was a lot of misinformation on Barry's video, so I'm going to be really covering that stuff up because it really annoyed me. And actually, if you're not an early player, if you're a mid-game player, or perhaps you're a later game player, I'd really appreciate it if you'd watch this too, because hopefully it means you can teach newer players the correct information, because misinformation is really problematic because it's just going to make people make mistakes, waste resources, and ultimately screw over their account. Now, if you haven't seen the video in question from Barry, I will put that in the description for complete transparency, so you can go and see that video for yourself and make your own judgments. But today, I'll just be taking little pieces of what he's said and giving you the correct information for yourselves, whilst also giving you my advice and guidance about using this new strategy. Now, the strategy in question discussed using Eloise as your first hero, and it was very simple. If you've seen any of my videos talking about early game, it's all the same stuff. You use Eloise as your first E5, you give her an Ignis as a support hero so that your Eloise can gain control immunity, and then you focus on Eloise's tenants by building yourself a Tix and building yourself a carry. Tix and carry offer important control and disruptive abilities to shut down problematic opponents, and also Tix is very powerful because his active skill hits hard and he steals attack from opponents. So you'll find that there are some waves in campaign that Eloise cannot beat, and this is actually where you go ahead and use Tix. You give Tix a melodic strings and you put your Ignis next to Tix. Now, it's not for the same reason as why you put an Ignis next to an Eloise. Instead, it's because of the 100 energy that Ignis gives when she dies, which allows Tix to do an active skill in round 2. Now, the key difference from any of that stuff that you may have heard in the past is that normally we would recommend you go with Fairy Queen Vesser as your first Transcendence hero. This is still recommended. She is excellent, her shields and healing is really good, and supports Eloise. But Barry's new strategy he was encouraging was to do with Aylamac. And this strategy has been tested by several people in the community, not Barry, and it's been tested by people like E, who has been doing loads of testing with Eloise for years. That guy is a fantastic contributor to the Idle Heroes community. And also there's a guy called Carnage who managed to beat Void Vortex Vanquisher using a 1.4 million attack Eloise alongside an Aylamac to support. So credit where credit is due, which I think is really important. Those people, along with a select few others in the community, are the brains behind this. Now, speaking with E directly, E has said that this is by no means finished. The finalities of the testing and the stuff discussed has not been fully clarified yet. And actually, me and E had a great discussion where our priorities in early game are a little different, and actually we were able to give each other a little bit of insight. Now, Barry was really bigging up Aylamac as a hero because of the shields you gain when you block. This is fantastic. This is a passive that Aylamac has. This is really, really useful. Now, Splendid Block is the main reason Aylamac is good. It means whenever an ally blocks, they gain a shield, and then that shield can also heal them. This is fantastic. We really, really like this ability. It's awesome. But one misinformation thing that Barry was talking about was actually going ahead and subliming this.
I mean, ultimately the goal is to get him sublimed and get some Tree of Origin power going. Once you already have that on your Eloise,
you should absolutely never, ever put Tree of Origin improvements on a Hyperspace Hunter Aylamak in the early game. First of all, it will make you waste sublimation improving Splendid Block, when actually your sublimation should be saved for someone like Lord of Fear Aspen, and this passive here is not going to be improved on Lord of Fear Aspen, so you're just wasting those melon chests, because inevitably you're going to get rid of Aylamac, so there is no reason to invest in him. As well, by investing in Aylamac, you're using Spiritual Essence that could be put into Eloise. Barry correctly identified in his video that Eloise should be your main homeowner, even when Aylamac is your first Transcendence hero. However, that means all your resource investment needs to go into Eloise, and potentially some Stellar Shards should go into her tenants as well. By investing in Aylamac, you just make your life a little more difficult because you're taking power from LOEs, which ultimately makes it harder. In fact, all you need to do for an Aylamac is make him Void 3 so you can get up to Sacred Sword, and then potentially give him the attack imprint of strength here, just so he has as much attack as you can possibly give him without over-investing Stellar Shards. The reason we do that is because all of the shields that you gain from Aylamac scale with his attack stat, and Void 3 plus that attack node is the most resource-efficient way to boost Aylamac's attack, and that is perfectly fine for early game. Another piece of misinformation that annoyed me is Barry was talking about Aylamac's basic attack and the fact it can reduce the precision of enemies. This is useless in the early game, as the majority of opponents, unless it's built into the hero themselves, do not have any extra precision. And in the game modes that do, it's things like Seallands, and last time I checked, Aylamac was a Fortress Transcendence hero, and therefore can only be used in Fortress Seallands 21+. And Eloise never really was struggling in Seallands anyway, even if he was a Shadow hero. Now granted, if Aylamac was a Shadow hero, that would be ridiculous, but in the early game, you do not need to invest in anything like this, and actually reducing an opponent's precision is going to have little effect on your Eloise's ability to block. In fact, it's more important that you just buff the block of your Eloise by, well, you don't even have to do that. She's already got incredible inbuilt block. I suppose that Aylamac's basic does improve the block of your allies, so I guess that's okay, and that's definitely a reason to be bigging up his basic attack, but it's definitely not the sublimation. Same thing as before, do not invest in this guy's Tree of Origin. It is super, super stupid and is going to screw over your progress. Now, one big question that was not addressed in that video at all, which I think is really important, especially if you're a new player. If you have a Fairy Queen Vesser, myself and E, the guy who is part of the team that came up with this strategy, completely agree that you should not by any means go regress that Vesser just to build an Aylamac. That is going to waste 10 soul symbols, because to get rid of a Transcendence hero, you have to go to the evolutionary cube and regress or replace them. 10 soul symbols is a huge investment. And why is it a huge investment? Well, it's because as an early player, you should be saving all your soul symbols to go do the bottom levels of the Glory Challenge, because it allows you to massively improve your spiritual essence income. When you get to 233,000 spiritual essence, you're able to get to Tree of Origin 3, and that's going to get you additional bonuses here. And once before considering these bonuses here, you have a total of just over 650,000 spiritual essence. You can go ahead and pick up the 600 from here in the middle, and that's going to take you to 1.25 million spiritual essence, which is enough to go and do the full bottom row down here. And that is a fantastic point to get to, because you can go ahead and then build a Tree of Origin 5 level 120 hero in every single faction and get yourself a ton of spiritual essence and a ton of stellar shards. And that was annoyingly something not mentioned in Barry's video, and I think that's exceptionally important for early game players. And that is the point when you transition to step 2 of his video, which was Lord of Fear Aspen and Scarlet Queen Halora. To make this change in the Glory Challenge, you're going to have enough soul symbols to first of all regress your Tree of Origin 3, maybe Tree of Origin 4, depends how high you've managed to get her, Eloise. By doing that, you then can go and build yourself a Fortress or Forest hero and a Light or Dark hero. And the last one you build then can be built all the way up to level 120. It will require 5 soul symbols to regress the Eloise, 5 soul symbols to regress the Fortress and Forest, and then 5 additional soul symbols to regress that one hero you build to level 120. You then need 25 more soul symbols to regress all the heroes across the bottom as well. So that brings you to a total of 5, 10, 15 plus 25, which is 40 soul symbols. On top of that, you're also going to need 10 soul symbols to regress the Aylamac you built. Remember, we only invest in him to be Void 3 plus that attack node. I want to stress that. You definitely don't take him to Void 4, and you definitely do not give him Tree of Origin improvements. But when you do go ahead and regress him, that's going to get you all the stuff back so that you can then go ahead and build yourself a Lord of Fear Aspen as your main hero. And on top of that, hopefully you'll have reached 5 million Crystals of Transcendence, so you can also build him a Scarlet Queen Halora. Also, by doing that, you're gaining so much spiritual essence from the Glory Challenge, allowing you to have a Tree of Origin 5 Lord of Fear Aspen, and potentially as much as a Tree of Origin 4 Scarlet Queen Halora. That's also going to save you some spiritual essence and stellar shards, so that when you do finally build Elena as your 3rd Transcendence hero, you can go ahead and improve her too, probably to Tree of Origin 4, maybe a little higher then on the Halora as well. Take the Halora to Tree of Origin 5. You'll probably have some stellar shards left over for also Aspen's tenants, just to make that Lord of Fear Aspen Aspen as powerful as possible. So that is when to transition. I think that was a really important thing missed out of Barry's video. It didn't tell you when to get rid of the Aylamac and switch to Lord of Fear Aspen and Scarlet Queen Halora. Also, I think Barry's video was quite misleading when it came to the sublimation on a Lord of Fear Aspen. You do not need much at all. Let me just tell you right here, if you look down at my Lord of Fear Aspen, that is the most sublimation you will ever need. The most important one here is the full active, then it's the final passive. We literally just improve this so that we gain more energy when we go ahead and crowd control opponents, and then that one extra bonus is just so we can have a little bit more HP and attack, but that's by no means necessary. On top of that, we go ahead and improve this so we get a little bit of crit damage, a little bit of fear bonuses, and mainly the HP and attack bonus is nice. And then literally that basic attack improvement there is just so we reduce the enemy's control immunity by a slightly bigger percentage. Now, all of these things here from these last passives are tiny percentage gains that are by no means necessary. The most important thing is the active skill. So if you have 2 melon sublimation chests, that's literally all you need to go ahead and reliably build Lord of Fear Aspen, which is why it's really recommended for free-to-play players to do this. Also, for those curious about the artifact progression you want to go for, first of all, you want to go and pick up a singular golden crown. This will be used on Eloise, which will pretty much carry her through most of the game. If you happen to get another golden crown from a bond chest, by all means make it glittery. There's no downside to improving this, but really the most you need is 1. On top of that, you then want to get melodic strings. I already mentioned that's going to be great on ticks for clearing normal campaign, and as well, you then after that want to be picking up Ruiceptors. Now you can go straight to Splendid if you wish, Radiant is fine, but a Splendid Ruiceptor is great because that's going to get you bonus rewards for doing that, because you do from the Glory Challenge pick up relics, and they're going to be helpful for buying more artifacts in the future. After that, you want to go ahead and get 8 Demon Bells so you can have 2 Splendids, go back and pick up maybe a couple more Ruiceptors so you can build 2 Radiants if that was a strategy you wanted to do, or maybe you can have a Splendid and a Glittery. It doesn't really matter too much, just having the ability to have 2 Ruiceptors without over-investing in building 2 Splendids is perfectly fine. And then you'll want to go ahead and build more Demon Bells so that you ultimately have 16, which is enough to make a ton of progress. Don't forget as well, it's worth considering building up your Golden Crown to Splendid at some point, as that will become necessary and extraordinarily useful for making progress in the Void campaign. Now, Campaign is another outlier because it was said in Barry's video that the reason we build Aylamac is to go ahead and clear Campaign very easily. That is not true at all. You can really easily clear Campaign by using Eloise, Tix, Ignis, Waldeck, and Carry. You actually do not need at all to have a Transcendence hero, and there are loads of people that will gladly tell you they managed to clear Campaign when they got to level 130 before even having a Transcendence hero. So that is just straight up misinformation. The reason we build Aylamac is because Aylamac plus Eloise is one of the most efficient ways to go and get Void Vortex, Vanquisher, beaten, and that is essential for making yourself as much Stellar Shard income as possible, because if you look, by having Vanquisher cleared, you get yourself 42,000 Stellar Shards every single time it comes along, and 21,000 Crystals of Transcendence. That's a pretty big leap from Defire, which is only 39,000 and 20,000. Now granted, that might not seem like a massive jump, but the big major difference is you also pick up these resources through the smashing of Vanquisher as well, and you pick up toolboxes and hard rock resources for the Celestial Island, and getting as much of that stuff as you can is essential for maximizing your progress in the early game, because Celestial Island and of course Stellar Shards will always be a bottleneck at no matter the point you are in the game. So once again, a huge shout out to Carnage and E being the people that have tested this reliably. E is still trying to get the clear of Vanquisher down to as much as 1.2 million attack on an Eloise, but Carnage has proven that with an Aylamac who is Void 3 with the attack node and everything else put in the Eloise, so she has 1.4 million attack, that is enough to go ahead and clear Vanquisher. Now, one hero that is used as part of this, or at least is theorized to be really helpful in that clear, is Elena. Elena is able to steal energy from opponents reliably, and also has a really nice passive which can allow you to dodge. So this is really, really helpful. It also heals, and therefore is strongly encouraged. If you want a hero to help you in that Vanquisher push, a 9-star Elena can do really, really well. Of course, you'll also want Ignis here and Waldeck as they're really good supports, but once E has gone ahead and come up with a final definitive clear, I'll make a separate video on that giving you all the information. And he was very clear with me and said he's still got a ton of things left to test and lots of data points to confirm before he can release a reliable piece of information for you guys. So stay tuned for that, as I'm talking with the guys who are working with this particular strategy to hopefully get you as much information and a definitive guide, which we will bring to YouTube in the future. If you want more information about using Lord of Fear Aspen as an early hero, we've got lots of account reviews out here, which we've been talking about for months, because this strategy is not new, right? Using Lord of Fear Aspen as an early hero has been well documented and well discussed on this channel for months. And if you're the kind of person that prefers to read as opposed to watch videos, well, go ahead and join the main Idle Heroes Discord, because they've got a full guide that breaks down how to use Lord of Fear Aspen as an early hero on your account. So a shout out to all the folks behind the writing of that guide, because it is extraordinarily helpful for new players. And to reiterate, you do not want to be making the switch to Lord of Fear Aspen until you've unlocked the Void campaign and of course have got enough resources to do the full Glory Challenge, because then you can coincide that switch with going ahead and regressing heroes and actually getting yourself all of the bonuses here, so you can make your Scarlet Queen Halora and Lord of Fear Aspen as strong as possible. And it might sound like a lot to need a minimum of 50 soul symbols, but you'll potentially need more as well to regress other heroes you have. So let's just call it 60 soul symbols to do this. But if you remember, you're getting 5 soul symbols every single month. You can get 60 soul symbols in a year. On top of that, in a year of playing, you should be doing at least 1 Heroic Summons event, so that's another 20 soul symbols, and at least 1 Prophet Orb event at some degree of progress, so that could be anywhere from 20 to 40 soul symbols there. So soul symbols in that first year of playing, which is going to get you enough to have 2 Transcendence heroes, is absolutely totally fine. Like, it might sound scary, it just means don't waste your soul symbols. So remember, E and myself, and I'm sure many other people in the community, absolutely recommend that, look, if you chose Fairy Queen Vesser, the only thing that really sets her apart from Aylamac is that reliable Vanquisher clear. If you're not going to invest gems into doing that, or you're just happy with having Defier as what you've done, and you'll just go ahead and do Vanquisher with a Lord of Fear Aspen and a Scarlet Queen Halora, then just stay with Vesser. Also, it's absolutely not worth, as I said earlier, to waste those 10 soul symbols. It is just not worth it. It's foolish, and you can just stick around with a Vesser. And Vesser, I would just happily make Void 4. And that's another advantage to the Aylamac, which wasn't mentioned in Barry's video, which is that you should only be making the Aylamac to Void 3 with that attack node, so it's actually cheaper on Stellar Shards to have an Aylamac. Yes, you need to make him Void 4 to unlock the Void campaign, but as soon as you do that, you can just remove the imprints and take him back to Void 3 with that attack node. So if you're looking for the most efficient early game thing to do with your Stellar Shards, it's actually to go ahead and build like this. That is going to save you Stellar Shards, which you can then use to improve the Tree of Origin on your Eloise, and also improve Eloise's tenants, because there's this weird dance you have to do with making Eloise Tree of Origin 3 and then improving her tenants to maximize the return of investment of those Stellar Shards. Because remember, investing in tenants like Tix and Carry are going to give you good stats from the Celestial Island home, because the attack and HP you do get, especially in these early stages like Void 2 and Void 3, it's actually quite cheap to reach those points when you look at the return of attack and HP values for the Stellar Shards invested. So actually, it makes it more viable to keep Eloise a Tree of Origin 3 and then focus on her tenants, because there becomes a point of diminishing returns where it's actually better to use a Stellar Shards on your tenants as opposed to the Eloise. And your focus is always getting Eloise's attack as high as possible, which is why, once again, I'm going to tell you, do not Tree of Origin improve the Aylamac. Now, one final point before I leave you to continue your YouTube binge watch journey. There are some Seallands that are strongly encouraged that you aim to beat to help you when doing the Aylamac First Transcendence strategy. As I said, the reason we're doing this is because it can give us an early Vanquisher clear, so getting particular Sealland 20s cleared is really going to help, because you increase the damage to the opponents in the Void by 30%, which is very, very useful. So you'll absolutely get Shadow done, and that will just be by having Eloise, but it's strongly encouraged that you go ahead and beat Abyss, because that's going to give you more damage to Fortress enemies. And as well, if you go ahead and do Forest, that's really helpful against one particular wave that uses Delacium, which can be a bit of an issue, but is the easiest to beat in Vanquisher. So you will need to go ahead and make sure you've done Sealland 20 with Forest, which you should be able to do with a Rogan. Or maybe you've done it early with your Garuda. I don't know what's on your account, but one of those two should beat it with some Stellar Shard investment. Dark can be done with Carry, so that's absolutely fine. We will be building building her with LOEs, and light will just happen when you either get 9 copies of Russell, or Ada, or Tara, or whoever it is you're going to invest in. And actually, you might not even need to do that, because people are now reliably clearing Light Sealland with 10-star Vulcans and a 9-star Andrea. And don't forget, by building a 10-star Vulcan, the Glory Challenge gives you 2 puppets in the Light faction, which makes building that Andrea to 9-star super easy. So if you just get some Michelles, a 9-star Andrea, and a 10-star Vulcan, you can actually beat Sealland 20 with that team. It's hilarious. So to make life as easy as possible for yourself, you really should be aiming towards doing most of your Sealland 20s. As for Fortress, you can probably do this with a Saja. If you plan on building her as a tenant for LOEs, that could be helpful. It's not as good as building a Jara, but could help you in the Fortress faction. Or you could just build a Penny. You know, Penny's really reliable, very easy to pick up as well. So you could just build a Penny to E5, clear it, and then at some point regress that Penny because, well, you're not going to need her anymore. And Penny can help you in Aspen Dungeon. Not that you should be struggling, though, because LOEs and Ticks can do Aspen Dungeon perfectly fine. So hopefully the importance of getting Sealland 20s cleared when doing this particular route is now understood to you, because there's no way you're going to be beating Vanquisher if you haven't got your Sealland 20s cleared, because it's essential to giving you that extra damage when going ahead and fighting opponents. And 30% extra damage is pretty significant. So hopefully you learned something today, and hopefully the misinformation from Barry's video has been cleaned up. It really did bother me because there was tons of stuff that would just end up completely ending up with new players screwing themselves over, whether it's chasing sublimation on Aylamac or not understanding why we're building Aylamac. And the fact that he said Aylamac's going to help us clear campaign is just completely untrue, because you should be clearing campaign just fine without a Transcendence hero. I suppose if you are struggling, the Aylamac can help, but that is not why we're building him. We're building him because he's better at clearing Vanquisher than your Fairy Queen Vesser could be, and he requires less Stellar Shards, only needing to be Void 3 plus that attack node, which means you can save more Stellar Shards to improve LOEs, because you don't need to make him Void 4, whereas with a Fairy Queen Vesser, improving her active skill is important, so Void 4 is much more essential on her. So hopefully that cleared some stuff up, and you understand why I felt like I needed to make this video. Fingers crossed you new players now know what to do, and if you're not a new player, please go spread the news on why Aylamac is recommended as a first Transcendence hero, and please stop people from making silly mistakes and wasting soul symbols. I'll see you next time, folks. Have a great week, don't forget to subscribe, and of course, happy idling.